everybody. Welcome to Real Brave Live on YouTube.
On YouTube.
We've canceled Facebook. Screw you, Facebook. Okay, today we're going to talk about something interesting, but before that, if you don't know this already, which you don't, Real Brave is a music school. We're online completely. You can log in at realbraveaudio.com, and you can get a lesson with a guy like that, or a gal, gal. And do we do all instruments? We host this.
We do. Were you asking? I thought you said, do we do all instruments?
I'm going to ignore you.
Because we don't. We don't. There are certain instruments we don't do.
Anyway, you can follow us here. Smash at that subscribe button. That's a new one. Subscribe to this friggin' thing. And follow us on all the socials at Real Brave Inc. Today we're going to talk about the Beatles breakup here on
Real Brave Live.
Okay. Why'd you interrupt me? That wasn't nice.
I thought you said, do we do all instruments? I thought you were prompting me for a response.
What don't we do?
We don't do harp. We don't do bagpipes.
We did get a harp request at one of the conventions.
Yeah,
and I was like, oof.
It's a beautiful instrument.
It is.
It seems easy enough. And I'm sure there's a harp player watching that's...
Is it the same as a piano?
In theory. In that the strings are just chromatic.
Because isn't a piano like a giant harp?
Well, in the inside of it, yeah.
Right, yeah, but then you're hitting it.
Right,
It's a percussive instrument, folks.
Yes.
If you didn't know that.
It's a beautiful instrument, but no, we don't teach it. We don't teach bagpipes. We don't teach banjo anymore.
Banjo, we teach ganjo.
We
teach guitar banjo,
I
right?
used to teach banjo. I used to teach mandolin.
You were pretty good.
And I stopped doing those things because I didn't want to anymore.
Okay, enough of that. So, and the Beatles officially announced their breakup in 1970, in April 1970, after a period of tension and disagreement among the band members.
Wow.
Apparently, Paul McCartney announced his departure from the band in a press statement on April 10th.
Dan, who are the Beatles?
The Beatles are four blokes from Liverpool. And they played music in the early to late 1960s and forever changed the world.
That all sounded like gibberish to me.
The other members confirmed the split shortly thereafter. However, the Beatles' final album, Let It Be, was released on May 1970, folks. One of the greatest albums of all time, one of the worst albums of all time.
It's one of the most middle albums of all time.
Really?
It's okay.
It's okay.
There's some really good songs, and there's also a lot of filler on there.
So the Get Back sessions were filmed.
Whoa. Let It Be is mid? Is that
there's a lot of filler on that album.
That's
yes.
That's our producer Brian talking there.
Yeah, Brian doesn't have a camera because he cut his hair.
Yep.
I just made myself less presentable.
Yeah, One After 909.
Yeah.
That's not filler.
Maggie May.
Maggie May is not filler.
Dig It.
Dig It.
Did a little bit of a filler.
They did a little weirdness. They had like a lot of talking and banter on Let It Be.
Yeah.
Because of all the Get Back sessions were the recordings for Let It Be, right? Okay. Prior to this, they were just not getting along.
Yeah. Well, they were super famous and rich at that point, and
had been a band for over 10 years.
Yep.
So then, all right. So
only
who
10?
They formed like 57, I think, was the first time McCartney and Lennon played together. 58 maybe.
It seems like such a long time. Such a short time. Sorry.
Well, their first record came out in 63. Like 63 to 70 is the entire recorded output, which is crazy because some bands take 7 years to put out an album now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did, I think, 11 or 12.
Yeah, they did
records in that time.
Massive success.
Oh, like unfathomable until that point.
Incredible. Like when you look at video of them on the Ed Sullivan Show at Shea Stadium, like that was in the 60s, right? It was unheard of. And then all of a sudden it was happening thereafter because the Beatles started it. They were the first boy band, I guess.
Yeah.
I would argue that point. I would say that they're the first boy band in the sense that like people had their favorites, everybody knew their personalities, but boy band implies like this prefab put together by a Svengali, choreographed dance moves thing where the Beatles weren't really that.
You know what's strange is that nobody I've ever talked to has ever had like a soft opinion on the Beatles. Like, oh, they're okay. It's always been like, oh, I love the Beatles, or like, oh, the Beatles, they're so overrated, I hate them.
I don't like that.
There's no middle of the road.
This is so stupid.
Yeah,
How
I
can
mean,
you argue that the Beatles are bad? That's like saying that peanut butter is bad just because it killed you.
nobody's allergic to the Beatles. But
Peanut butter is delicious.
there's some valid arguments though, like as
and it's
to
great with jelly.
why the Beatles were so big is they were innovating, right?
Yes.
They were innovators, but they were just the first people to do what they did.
They also incorporated things that people had not thought to incorporate before, technologically and also like instrumentally. Like the point I always make to people who don't like the Beatles is, if you're showing a movie from the 1960s, if you're in a movie and it's supposed to be the 60s, what's the sound people make to show the 60s? It's a sitar, which is the hobby of the third most popular Beatle. They are so successful that the hobby of the third most popular has become cultural shorthand for an entire decade.
Yeah.
Like, that's their cultural impact. It's impossible to fathom.
So, to the point where you're saying about like the arrangements and all that, who was the fifth Beatle?
George Martin.
George Martin. So did George Martin have
Pete Best.
Pete Best? Obviously, poor Pete. He's still alive.
Yeah.
Hi Pete. I know you're watching the show. Big fan of the show.
Sup, Pete?
Big fan. But it could be argued that George Martin innovated too, right? With
Absolutely.
the arrangements that he did. For if you listen to The Long and Winding Road, which is on Let It Be.
That's not his arrangement. That's Phil Spector's arrangement.
How do you know that?
Because I'm a font of useless information. We've been through this.
Right out loud. Is that sure?
It is true, yes.
That?
Phil Spector.
Phil Spector, Wall of Sound. Phil Spector.
Yes, he was brought in.
Murderer, right? Murderer.
Yes, murderer. Phil Spector. Yes,
Convicted murderer.
He was brought in to sweeten those sessions, and he added strings and voices to Long Winding Road, Across the Universe.
Oh my God. Filler album. Jeez.
I Me Mine, and there's one more, and I'm not going to pull it at the moment. But there were 4 songs he added orchestral and voices to. McCartney hated it. He
wanted it because that's when he put out Let It Be Naked. He was like, this is the way it should have been.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Which one had the drums on Let It Be go? You know, where there's like, it's almost, I don't know if he's playing a 16th notes, but it's definitely, I think it may be like a delay. Like a 16th
Yes,
note
I
delay.
think it's just a delay. Yeah,
Was that?
I think
naked version?
that's Glenn Johns who engineered the first half of the sessions.
Oh, okay.
Again, a font of useless information here.
I'm still looking this up because I could have sworn it was
And then
George Martin.
one of the version has a solo that's like. That's really loud.
Yeah, the one is through a Leslie speaker, and it has like the rotary sound, and
That
one
I
is
know.
distorted.
But then there's another one that's.
That's the distorted one. That's the album version.
That's the
other
album
one is the
version.
single version.
Ah, okay.
All right, Brian's right. Phil Spector added orchestral and choral overdubs.
Phil Spector.
Spector's modifications angered McCartney to the point that when he made his case,
Phil Spector, the murderer.
Yes.
The Beatle murderer.
he cited the treatment of the song as one of the 6 reasons justifying the split.
Wow. See, Beatle murderer. Was another one?
So
of
it
the
wasn't
reasons?
Yoko, it was Phil Spector.
I mean, she's got to be one of the 6.
They claim she's not.
What were all the 6?
But I don't know.
No, Paul McCartney has sat on Howard Stern show and said like it was weird to have her in the room.
Yeah, but I think he was willing to overlook it if it meant the band would stay together.
You've seen the video of John and Yoko playing with Chuck Berry?
Yes.
I love that video where she's just howling in the background.
Oh yeah.
And you can see Chuck Berry's eyes just like
Yeah,
grow like
yeah.
the size of a
Yeah.
saucer. It's like,
Yeah, and
what
John-
is this?
Yeah, John's into it. Was John's use of heroin one of the main reasons why they split?
Probably. I'm sure it couldn't help. Rarely does heroin help a band.
Why? Kevin. Tell us.
Well, the
Why is
instances.
Kevin the authority on heroin and bands?
Well, you know me. I'm out here partying nonstop. No, I mean it helps people if they're severely ill or in a lot of pain.
That's morphine.
It comes from the pop. It's a derivative of the poppy plant.
Tell me more about heroin.
Kids don't do drugs. What's our audience? Is it kids? Is it adults?
It's adults. This is all 45 plus.
Leave a comment in the the comment section if you dig heroin.
Please don't. We do not. We do not accept any type of drug use. This is strictly
Unless a doctor prescribed it
yeah,
and approves.
yeah.
They used to use heroin in like medical.
Yeah, cocaine too.
Cocaine. All the
Cocaine
good
was
stuff.
in Coca-Cola, right?
Sure was.
Hell of a drug.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug. All right, where are we going with this?
Well, let me ask you guys this. You're both musicians, have been in
I am a guy,
bands for many
yes.
years.
Something like that.
How long was the longest band you were in? How long were you active with one band?
Oh, that's a good question.
9 months, probably.
So
in
you-
high school.
High school, okay.
I would say, well, I played with one drummer for 7 years in 3-4 different bands.
Okay. By the end of that tenure, did you want to hang out with him more?
Is he the one that went on to date Lady Gaga or something?
No.
Asked and answered. Thank you.
Yes.
No, that was a friend of mine's drummer.
Oh, a friend of yours, drummer.
Yes. That's a crazy story if you want to hear that one. But I'm going to get it wrong, and it's going to be, like, recorded. But I'll just ask me off
Fact
air.
check it, and we'll do it some other time.
You probably know the story.
I don't.
Oh, I know that story, Brian says.
No. I don't.
Yeah, so I think the longest that one band, Serene, was together was 4 years. So that to answer your question.
Yeah, and keeping a band together is never easy,
No.
especially when there are other things going on in your life. And for the Beatles, who were richer than they ever thought possible, who were dealing with levels of fame that were insurmountable, probably, they were able to just. I don't think they were able to keep it together just because natural forces pulled them apart. I think that's the boring answer no one wants to hear,
Yeah.
but I think that's probably a big part of why they broke up.
Yeah.
Artistically, though. Artistically, they were going in separate directions.
Yeah, exactly.
And George Harrison was getting his due. He was writing these great songs, and what came of it?
Right.
It came in after the Beatles. He wrote some of that stuff during the Beatles, right?
Yeah, the whole All Things Must Pass album is a triple album, and like most of those songs were written during
Right.
his Beatles tenure.
Right. But yeah. So I agree with what you're saying, 100%. And they were young. They were like in their 20s, early 30s, right?
I want to say Lennon was 30 in 1970, which makes me feel like a real underachiever.
Yeah,
when you realize
no.
how much the Beatles achieved in their
Yeah.
20s.
As I get further into my 30s, like watching hockey the other day, and 28-year-old so and so on the ice, I'm like,
Vladimir
what?
Vladov.
Yeah, I'm like what?
That's
Yeah.
his name?
I could be doing that.
I would be the oldest player on the Mets. So, yes.
You would be, what's his name? The pitcher that hit the home run.
David Cohn.
What?
David Cohn.
No.
Roger Clemens.
No.
Babe Ruth.
Jacob deGrom?
No.
Noah Syndergaard.
Forget it.
Those
Mike
are both former Mets.
Piazza.
No. Anyway.
Rizzuto.
He was like 43 years old when he came back to the Mets.
Bartolo Colon.
Bartolo Colon.
Oh,
thank
Brett
you.
Favre.
Yes.
And he's still pitching.
In some Dominican league,
Yeah.
whatever. He's still out there.
Wasn't Brett Favre an old guy on the Jets?
He was, yes.
Hey, I know something about
There
sport.
might be another old Green Bay Packer coming to the Jets.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Joe Montana?
Almost.
Montana?
Yeah.
Montana.
Montana.
Oh, Hannah
Joe
Montana.
Montana is an actor.
Oh.
Joe Montana is a football player.
Oh, okay.
What do you think about Brian Epstein passing away that kind of like made them go apart as far as like the unit?
I would
Because that was
say
in what, 1967?
Probably one of the 6 reasons that they went apart.
So that's probably we're up to 7 now.
Oh, 7 reasons.
Yeah.
We
Because
did-
like they didn't. Well, maybe there's 6 reasons that McCartney had.
well, hold on. We got heroin.
yeah.
We got Yoko.
Yeah.
We got Phil Spector's Wall of Sound.
Yeah.
We've got
It wasn't his wall of sound. It was his orchestral arrangement.
Sure, there's a Wall of Sound. George Martin dying.
No,
George
Brian
Martin died like
Epstein
2 years ago.
Brian Epstein.
dying. George
Dying.
Martin lived to like the 20
That's right.
teens.
You're
yeah.
right. You're right. Right. Did he do the remaster of something that happened
His son
in 2018?
His son did.
His son does all that stuff
That's
now.
right. Okay.
What do you think of that?
I mean, have you heard them?
I've heard the mono versions.
They
They're
sound
interesting.
really good.
They sound, yeah. Well, you could tell he fattened everything up.
Yes.
Like, because when you do an AB, I don't know if you're into that.
Nope.
Okay. Are you're
Yes.
yeah. So when
More
you
of a
do an
C
AB,
guy.
you can hear.
Like
Okay, well
C's
that
and D's.
snare it doesn't sound like it sounds deeper.
Right.
Stuff like that, and you could tell he fattened it up. But otherwise, I don't know.
I mean, it's a craven attempt to make money, right? They're trying to resell you the same thing you own 6 times.
Yeah, they can't go back on tour like Kiss, so
Exactly. Yeah. So.
and they were never a touring band. You know, there was a studio band.
Right.
So.
Exactly. But like, so my favorite album of all time is the White Album, and the White Album remaster that Giles Martin did brought out a lot of stuff I had never heard, and I've heard that album 1,000 times.
What did you hear?
The remaster, I thought it was really interesting, and but some of the decisions I don't love. Like there's little things that are different than the album I grew up listening to. You know, and it's tough to 40 years after hearing something to hear it a different way. You know, it's not always going to land for you.
I've got blisters on my fingers.
That was actually brought really down in the mix.
I don't like that.
I don't like it either.
Yeah, that scared the living crap out of me as a kid.
Me too. Oh, yeah. Second only to the end of I Want You, She's So Heavy.
Yeah.
Those scary Beatle moments on
Yeah,
record.
yeah.
The end of Strawberry Fields.
Oh, yes.
There's
That too.
a little backwards
Yeah.
loop in there.
Yeah, so anybody that says the Beatles suck needs to, like, bring it down a notch.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
I think
come on.
Strawberry
like-
Fields is actually my example always.
What?
Like Strawberry Fields Forever is an example. When someone says Beatles are overrated, I
Yeah.
say housewives were listening to this on the radio. It's this avant-garde,
Yeah, right.
musical concrete,
Yeah.
backwards, just bizarre piece of music that was the #1 hit in the world. They exposed so many people to art that would have never been experienced otherwise. I don't know how you can say that's overrated.
You could say that Rush is overrated.
Sure.
You could say that Fish is overrated.
No, you would never say that. They're not overrated. If
People-
anything, they're underrated.
People have to take
By
them
people
seriously
like
first.
you. And oh man, guys, you've been listening to the spring tour.
No.
45-minute long tweezer.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That seems at least 40 minutes too much.
It's
Way too
it's
much,
their
dude.
third longest tweezer, I think. Fish fans, let me hear you out in the comments.
I feel for you, man. Having been through 2 shows,
Been through two shows. You say it like it's like a
War.
like a
Yeah.
war
I've been
time.
through 2 Fish shows, and let me tell you.
2 tours at
2
Atlantic
tours
City.
of Fish. I could say that it is something else, man.
It sure is.
I remembered it.
Yeah. And-
I was one of the. We were 2 of the 200,000 people that probably remembered
Yeah, it's about
the show.
Probably about 100, man.
100,000 at Atlantic City.
Atlantic City on the beach. Yeah, but the drag about those shows is that they were like almost the same show. I was really upset about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they played like the same big ones. You know what I mean? They gave us a fluff head. They gave us You Enjoy Myself. You know, they gave us a Mike's Groove at each of those. And
Okay.
which are great. They're great. I
Yeah.
had a blast. I was hoping you were gonna catch like a horn, or like something like a bust out.
Or like herpes. I almost caught that.
Fish fans.
Okay.
Let me
Did,
hear your
did
comments.
dreadlocks hit you in the face at any point?
No, but
Oh,
body
they came
odor did.
close. Yeah.
Strange tattoos did.
Yeah.
I was at a
and-
Ween show, and a dreadlock got me right in the face.
Oh,
but
yeah.
but I was wearing my mask. It was right after COVID.
Okay.
So thank goodness the mask saved me from getting Wook disease or whatever.
You don't know where that's been. Here's
The
another.
Wook flu.
Oh, the Wook flu? Okay,
Yeah,
thank,
yeah.
thank you for
The Wook flu.
clarifying.
So here's getting back to the Beatles, what we're talking about. Goddamn Fish. So another thing that has been, or at least on the wiki, business difficulties,
Yes.
right, with Apple. In,
Yes.
in early 1969, Apple Corp was plagued with mismanagement and was losing money.
Wow.
How is that possible?
Yeah.
Because they had no idea how to run it.
They had not yet released the personal at-home computer. That's why.
Yeah, they didn't have the app. Aww. Do we have a drum?
We could do this. Go. Nearly falls over.
Yeah.
Great.
They didn't. McCartney chose. Oh my goodness.
His father-in-law to be his manager,
Yeah.
which is never a smart move. But the Beatles also, the other 3 Beatles selected Alan Klein, who was a known crook.
So wait a
So-
second. So there was an actual trial, like
Oh, it was I don't know if it went to trial, but it was certainly
So they
a
had
contentious thing.
they had a crook for a manager and a murderer as a
Producer, yes.
as a producer.
The late 60s were a rough time.
This is a crime syndicate. This is not
Yeah.
a band.
So Alan Klein managed the Rolling Stones, and when they went to them, were like, "Hey, should we get this guy as a manager?" Mick Jagger was like, "Sure, whatever." Even though he was currently stealing millions of dollars from the Stones just didn't say anything to the Beatles, and so they hired this manager who wound up losing them millions of dollars.
That's nice.
Yeah.
On January 26th, Lennon and Ono met with Alan Klein, the founder of APCO Records. Regarding managerial advice, Lennon requested that Klein represent his business interests with the band. McCartney chose to be represented by American entertainment lawyers Lee and John Eastman, the father and brother of his girlfriend Linda Eastman. We all know who that is.
Oh, yeah.
Whom he married on March 12th. So Klein was appointed as the band's business manager on an interim basis, with the Eastmans as the Beatles' lawyers. The band members' quarrels and disharmony over the musical matters soon permeated into their musical or business discussions. Yeah, how can that not? You're talking like millions of dollars back then.
Yes.
Hundreds.
But still, you got to
Dozens.
keep it separate. You separate church and state there. The
You
creative
can't.
the creative process it happens outside the money making.
What if you were writing all the music in this band that we were in?
I did?
And, well, no, you didn't.
No.
And I said, well, I have a lot more. Well, you did. But I have a lot more music that I want to do. But you were like, no, I'm the band, and I want to do this
So
myself.
Then you should kick me out of the band.
Well, you wrote all the music, though.
But you have some music too.
I do, but you won't let me play it.
But the band's not called Kevin and the Hard Knocks. So then you should get a say, I think.
That's so stupid. If
My-
it's called Kevin and the Hard Knocks and I have music that I want to play, then
Yeah.
I should just form my own band.
Yeah.
No, I'm one of the Hard Knocks. I mean, but the
What's your
Beatles.
claim to fame?
What?
What's your claim to fame as one of the Hard Knocks?
Yeah, I'm the fifth member of the Hard Knocks.
Nice.
But the Beatles had 4 prolific songwriters. Well, 3.
3 prolific songwriters. And poor Ringo.
But Ringo had the most successful solo career out of all of them.
Well, yeah.
The longest. Right?
Huh?
The longest one. No, the
No,
most.
the most successful, the
commercially,
biggest
yeah.
selling.
In the early 70s, he was the man. He had a bunch of big singles and, just was in movies. And he sort of, I think he represented the sort of innocence of the Beatles. People liked watching him just be Ringo. Him being Ringo was a reminder of what the Beatles used to be. Yeah, exactly. Just bob in the head.
Bob in the head and playing like Ringo.
Yeah.
Ringo played like Ringo.
He did.
Best drummer of all time?
No, but I do like Ringo. People slam on Ringo as a drummer, and I like Ringo as a drummer.
People say that there's certain people that say that Ringo's the best drummer of all time.
Yeah.
Like the feel.
Yeah.
Anyway. Right?
So
when
I
you're in a
remember-
recording session and someone's like, "Oh yeah, give me that laid back feel." That's Ringo.
I remember being like 11 or 12 and being in my first band, and my dad going to drop me off at my drummer's house to go practice, and I was talking about like what a good drummer this kid was. He was very good, but loud and heavy. But in the middle school I was at, he was one of the few people that could play drums, And I remember my dad saying, a good drummer is one you don't really notice all that much.
Yeah, tell that to the Who.
Tell that to the Who, tell that to Rush, or tell that to
Led Zeppelin.
John Fishman. Yeah,
No.
No, but there's an element of truth to it. But I feel like, definitely drummers will have take umbrage with that statement. But I feel like keep time is top priority for that. For
Yes.
not just the drummer though, but for the entire band. Like when people are going to listen to music, and I tell this to my students too, because on guitar we deal with a lot of rhythmic elements. When people go to listen to music, they're going there and they're doing this, right? That's just like a physiological reaction to the thing that you're doing on stage. But the second you stop, they're like really uncomfortable, right? So when I'm talking about strumming, and it being like a fluid thing, and it's just like a motor that doesn't stop, right? That's the point that I'm trying to get across, how important forward moving rhythms are and how they take precedent and priority over the exact right notes.
Yeah.
Unless you're a concert violinist
Which I'm not.
and you're getting paid
Not anymore.
thousands of dollars
I
to
used to
play
be.
the exact right notes. If you're on a stage at a bar or at Real Brave here in Oakland, New Jersey, just keep the rhythm going, And there are exercises, when we practice exercises on guitar, we're doing them with a metronome, and then that's on any instrument. When we're doing it with a metronome, the reason for that is the metronome will keep us accountable to the beat. The correct notes will come. your brain makes like these sort of subconscious markers in them. Like, oh, I missed that. I have to get it next time.
Nobody will notice if the guitar player playing the solo. Not nobody. Most people won't notice if the guitar player playing a lead part is off by half a step on one note.
Right.
But if the drummer misses a beat,
Oh, yeah.
everyone notices.
Right, right.
Sure.
It's a very different thing.
Thank you for that dissertation on how drummers should just shut up.
Yeah,
Kevin?
shut up, drummers.
So imagine this. So now McCartney leaves the band but releases McCartney in 1970, right?
Yes.
So what would Maybe I'm Amazed sound like with the Beatles? I wonder what that would sound like.
There's a YouTuber whose name I can't remember now who has done this thing where he assembles albums made up of the Beatles solo stuff by the time period. He's like, he takes all the Beatles solo stuff from 1970 and makes like a lost Beatles album out of it. And when you listen to those albums, you're like, oh my God, what this could have been if this band had stayed together. And, you know, Instant Karma and Maybe I'm Amazed and Isn't It a Pity and all these great solo songs, if those were on one record, how great that record would be.
Imagine, the whole Imagine record.
Yeah.
Basically, the whole Imagine record from
Yeah.
start to finish is pretty great. Yeah, I don't know. And what did Ringo do? Ringo just played with everybody.
Don't Come Easy is an early Ringo hit. It's a good song. Photograph is a great Ringo song.
Photograph's okay. Yeah. It
Um,
sounds like Ringo, though. It's just like...
It does. It does. But it's funny when they were assembling the Get Back film Peter Jackson did a couple years ago. They found this bit of banter between Lennon and Harrison, where Harrison basically says we should just take a break and make solo albums and then come back together. And McCartney has said that if he knew that at the time, it wouldn't have broken up. That if he had heard that conversation, he'd have encouraged that, and they could have gone on being the Beatles and just having solo records within there. And that's a real shame when you think about that.
Yeah, it is.
We should just break up for a bit and then come back later.
Just get a divorce.
We'll make albums later. Yeah. And it's a shame. Did you like the Peter Jackson's
I did.
Yeah,
yes.
Get Back? I thought it was so cool. Watching them like write songs, and it was just like that's how you write a song.
Yeah.
You just sit there and he's playing Get Back
Yeah, and you see him
over and over and over and over and
Yes.
over again.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my god." That's how you write a song. Of course it is. That's how everybody does it. And
Yeah.
that's how Paul McCartney did it. Paul McCartnney, not poor. Poor McCartney. The Lovely Linda is the first song on McCartney's first album.
Mm-hmm. About 40 seconds long.
Yeah. You think he did that on purpose?
Apparently, that was what he tested the equipment with. That was like he got a new recording thing, and he just that was the first thing he recorded.
Dude,
And then was like, let's put it on the album.
I think we should put Brian on stage, and I'll just be the producer.
How long is Her Majesty?
Probably a little shorter than that.
A little
But
shorter.
not much shorter, though, about the same.
Yeah. The Lovely Linda is like this, like him just doodling around.
Yeah.
Lovely Linda. If I get
It's
going,
amazing how-
I can do it. I can
It's
do
amazing
all
how
the
much of a
Beatles.
wife guy both McCartney and Lennon were, writing songs about their wives just all the time, just being
Well,
wife guys.
here's another. All right, so you just brought back
Is
something.
this where we talk about how much we love our wives?
Yes,
How much do you guys love your wives, guys?
Oh, so much.
so much. Very much.
Speaking of wives, so Lennon.
I'm serious. This isn't
No,
funny.
no, it's funny to me because I don't have a
But
wife.
but Lennon, like, remember when we had our what was her name? Star, Flip, Jippy, Gil.
What are you talking? What?
What
we had
the,
a
the
what?
intern from William Patterson that hates us.
Van.
Van. I was very close.
Friend of the show.
Flippy.
Fli-
And she.
Sound like you're naming Ninja Turtle villains.
Do you remember when we were sitting here?
Bebop or Rocksteady. You know, what's your name, Shredder?
When we were talking about Lennon, and she's like, "I hate the Beatles," and then she said something to the effect of, "Well, he's a wife beater,"
Oh yes.
and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then she's like, "Yeah, well, the lyrics to one of their songs."
Getting better.
Getting better.
Yes.
He used to beat. I used
To be
to.
cruel to my woman and beat her and keep her apart from the things that she loves.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that there's an element to this generation that found that out and doesn't like it. I'm not advocating for that, obviously.
I mean, the next line on the song is, I was mean, but I'm changing my scene. He was trying to get better. Whether or not, that doesn't excuse the behavior.
No.
But he wasn't like, yeah, I beat my wife up high. You know, like, he was trying to be
But
contrite
is it
for
real? Or is it just a lyric? They were just a band.
He said he beat his first wife.
Okay, so that's my point.
Yeah.
in like
In
tennis.
in
In chess?
Monopoly.
I think in many ways, probably Monopoly too.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's. I mean,
I'm
yeah.
not laughing
We
at
had
this.
talked
It's a
about
funny
that
joke.
before, and it is rough. No, here at We're Real Brave, we certainly do not advocate.
No,
any
we
sort
don't.
of
I mean, I'm laughing because
violence of
of
any sort.
the intern thing.
Right. No. Yeah, and like looking back on it and like being an adult and like realizing those things, like does it color your view of John Lennon? Like a little bit, yeah, for sure.
He was a socialist,
Yeah.
Marxist weirdo.
Sure was.
And again, this does not excuse anything, but at the time, that was not uncommon. I'm not saying it was right.
Socialism?
No, beating your wife, like
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
you
yeah.
know,
Also socialism.
socialism's been a consistent, constant throughout the last couple centuries. But yes, but no, just that I'm not excusing it whatsoever. It's a terrible thing, but it was not. Today, no one would write a song about that.
No, of course not. And the idea that it's like being glossed over and like, oh, he's a hero of music, but yeah, he did these horrible things apparently. Which
There's a whole discussion here about what it means to forgive somebody for doing something wrong, especially 50 years later or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we're not here to litigate that.
I mean, almost 50 years ago, I pooped my pants and my mom cleaned it up.
Kevin, when was the last time you pooped your pants?
I wanted to let that sit there. I wanted to really just kind of soak in that. So yeah, I mean, don't beat your wife.
Don't poop your pants.
What have we learned today?
Don't poop your pants. Don't break up if you're the top selling band in the world. Or if you do break up, just go on a little solo adventure and then come back. You know? Like
The-
Fish.
No.
The band Fish.
No.
Who took their first hiatus in
Ugh.
2001 until 2004, and then another hiatus again from 2006 until 2008.
If they stayed together, maybe we would never had all this other great music. Like, I listened to a lot of Harrison's music recently, and there's a great documentary about his life.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen
By
that?
Martin Scorsese? Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. We wouldn't have gotten all that.
True.
So, who knows?
I used to have an argument with my father, who was a huge Beatles fan, who would always lament the fact they didn't get back together, that it didn't never happen.
Yeah.
And I would always, part of it was I was a teenager and would like to argue with my dad, but I would say, you know what, it would never have lived up to what we thought it would. Like, but I truly believe that when the greatest band of all time breaks up, no matter what they do when they get back together, it's not gonna emotionally satisfy you the way the old stuff did.
Well, was he happy when they got back together, record Free as a Bird?
He did like that, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I like Free as a Bird.
Yeah.
What was the other tune?
Real Love.
Real Love's okay.
Yeah.
I like Free as a Bird better.
So do I.
Yeah, definitely. What'd you think of those two songs?
I don't know what songs those are. Who are we talking about?
The Beatles.
Oh.
They got back together to do the...
Fish covered the White Album once.
Yeah, at
How dare you bring up...
I'm bringing him back into the conversation. I got to get him back into... It's like a little kid. Like, hey, look over here. There's a piece of candy over here, right? Look at the
95
fish. Yeah, I have to
Halloween
wave the
show.
fish
They like to
thing.
put on a musical costume, so they covered the entire White Album. For Revolution
you.
9, John Fishman got naked on stage and ran around.
All right. Let's get back to the conversation. Your job, you're doing it well,
Thank you.
is always bring fish into it.
Thank you.
Just like a fish fan would.
Yes.
Yeah.
Intolerably.
And you do a good job of it. I mean,
Sure.
it's kind of adorable.
I represent the fan base on a certain number of levels.
I'm sure like all the two people that watch this are like, wow, he's good at what he does.
I don't think anybody's watching this right now. How can we
Nope.
tell if somebody's watching this?
we can't.
We can't.
We can.
We can?
We can't.
Can we?
If you're watching, say something in the comments. Don't be shy. Come on. Say something, please. Please. All right.
It's me.
It's probably you.
No, yes.
One viewers.
Great.
Okay, that's all right. Listen, we can only go up from there or down.
Oh, yeah? How many you got now?
0. All right, so you didn't like Free as a Bird.
I like Freeze a Bird.
Okay.
What year was that?
96,
4 or 6 or 5.
I think.
Somewhere around
Somewhere.
there.
And
Somewhere in the-
who is the personnel on that?
So that was there was a box of cassette tapes that Yoko Ono gave Paul McCartney that were demos, and so McCartney brought that to the Beatles. So Ringo, George, Paul, and then Jeff Lynne of the Electric Light Orchestra / Traveling Wilburys, he produced those sessions.
/ the they want to be the Beatles.
Yeah.
Did
Yes.
they use the John Lennon
Yes.
demos?
So his voice and piano are from that demo.
Wow.
What was very hard was that he didn't have a metronome when he was playing, and so
Sure,
he comes
yeah.
in and out of time. And the tape had some degradation
Yes.
issues,
Sure,
and
yeah.
it was just
They also had they did some. I'm gonna fact check this with you, but they did innovative things to make it so that they could use the actual recording.
yeah.
And if I remember that correctly, they had to use time. Like they actually had to correct the timing, right?
Yes, they had to,
Yeah.
and we're talking like mid '90s technology here is not.
Yeah, they could have
super
just waited
sophisticated.
like 25 years and then deep faked the whole thing.
Well,
right?
exactly. Yes.
So there was. So I remember this. They had ADATs in the mid 1990s, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The ADATs. Yeah, they did.
They
'cause I
might have had
remember
early Pro Tools rigs.
I don't. But I remember there was a box that the producer used to work on. You could put like 30 to 40 seconds on at a time, and then edit
you
it.
could fit so many seconds in this bad boy.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like you could edit and then get like snippets from it and create things. But
I believe they had to basically break it down like beat by beat,
Yeah.
and then reposition every piano hit or whatever, which would be tough today, let alone doing it.
I could do that in my sleep now.
Oh,
Are you kidding me? I'm so good at that.
Weird flex, but okay.
No, I'm serious.
I
I'm
believe
really,
it.
really. But it's super. It's boring.
I believe it. You're an audio guy.
yeah. You know how many times I recorded someone that was just not great, and then you had to fix the timing, but you would do it in a little bit manually, so you didn't feel like it was
right. It's not just
completely-
quantized. It's
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm pretty good at it. That's what's gonna say in my tombstone. Good at.
I was pretty good at it.
I was pretty good at it.
That's great because it's so open to interpretation.
Yeah. The it
People
is
can
up
walk
to the
by
griever.
and put anything they want
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that statement.
What was he good at? Was
You
it
know,
omelets?
No, it.
Was it baking cakes?
Yes, that
Okay.
was it.
Anything else we want to say about the Beatles breaking up, Kevin?
It's a real bummer.
Back in the USSR. Fine. That's all I got to say about that. Brian, any last words? We'll probably talk about this again because
yeah.
it does happen every year.
If you're ever interested in more about this, there's a great book called "You Never Give Me Your Money" by Pete Doggett that talks about the breakup of the Beatles. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, get that book.
Cool. I'd like to thank special guest Pete Best for stopping on the program today.
Yeah, friend
Uh,
of the show.
Just
Love having him on.
go back about 30 minutes and you'll see him there.
Yep.
That's rage bait right there. Oh, I thought Pete Best was on there.
Yeah, we're trying not to rage bait people, but we can't help it.
Yeah, actually, our most successful videos on YouTube are completely wrong.
Yeah.
So,
And we're really not doing it on purpose. We're not like those people on the Facebook videos that are like, watch what happens when we dump this whole bucket of Mentos into this whole big gallon tub of Coke.
and then you're waiting for like 20 minutes.
And they're like talking about
Yeah,
it.
they're
like,
talking
oh,
about,
it's
"I'm about
gonna
to
be
do it."
crazy. And
What
then-
about those videos where they're like, there's a guy behind the girl about to do the thing, and he's just like
Oh yeah. No, the Snapchat
weird,
videos,
like
I don't know. I don't care for it.
why did we go there? Real Brave is a music studio. That and we teach online. Thank you, Kevin. I like Motley Crue's version better, personally. Just kidding.
That's a
guy.
bad take.
I know.
That's
I know.
not
It's
good.
really bad. It's so terrible, actually. Nobody could do. You ever heard Bon Jovi's version of it?
I hope to go to my grave not having heard Bon Jovi's version of it.
I've heard a bunch of versions, and there's no better one than the Beatles. Quite honestly,
I saw Aerosmith do it once.
that might be really good.
It was okay.
The Fish version is terrible.
Ugh.
Let me tell you, it's bad, but bad on purpose, so it's great.
Who's singing it? Fishman?
I think so. I think he
Yeah.
goes on that.
Good for him. We teach online. Go to realbraveaudio.com. 2 guys in a room, 3 guys in a room, talking about music every week here on YouTube. Please destroy that subscribe button. Like us, Real Brave Inc. Everywhere else in the world. Come back here next week to watch us here on
Real Brave Life.